By 1948, an outbreak of the deadly disease, poliomyelitis, killed thousands of people, most of whom were children in the US. The increasingly devastating toll of the outbreak was in great need of a cure. The development of the first successful polio vaccine by Jonas Salk forever changed medicine and society by relieving widespread fear and anxiety around the disease. In the short term, the extensive distribution of the vaccine resulted in a significant drop in cases in just a few years after the adoption of Salk's vaccine. In the long term, the success of Salk's work grew the public's trust in vaccines and led to the near eradication of polio throughout the entire world, as well as serving as a shining example of how future vaccination campaigns could follow.
Dating back to the ancient Egyptian era, polio had started to spread and infect many people. Polio is an extremely dangerous virus because once infected, it is incredibly difficult to recover from the paralyzing or even fatal symptoms of the virus. Approximately 1 in 200 people who contracted polio commonly suffered lower body paralysis, the majority of whom would have to use a wheelchair or crutches for the rest of their lives, and almost all infected individuals had difficulty breathing.
Polio is very infectious, and in fact almost all children were infected with polio before vaccination. So it's transmitted either by the respiratory route, so it can be carried in the nose and in the throat, and that's usually only carried for a few weeks, but it's longer in the gastrointestinal tract, so it can be transmitted via fecal-oral transmission also, so obviously hygiene is key to prevent that.
While there was a slight possibility of experiencing weakened muscles and lungs, treatment was extremely expensive. Often those who were infected with polio would use a device called the iron lung, a cylindrical chamber with a vacuum system that would change pressure and push air into and out of the lungs. It quickly became apparent that children were more susceptible to catching the disease, often called infantile paralysis, and many worried parents kept their children inside to protect them. Paul Alexander was the oldest known polio survivor who lived in an iron lung for 72 years. He recently passed away on March 11th, 2024, at the age of 78.
I lost all of my movement, period, because he would swallow, and I would stop breathing.
According to the World Health Organization, throughout the 40s and early 50s, over 500,000 people were paralyzed or died from the disease annually. Jonas Salk was born on October 28, 1914. He was the eldest of 3 children, and as a child, he was interested in anything related to human anatomy. In 1934, he attended NYU School of Medicine, and Salk graduated with the highest honors in his last year of medical school. After medical school, Salk worked with Dr. Thomas Francis Jr., a well-known scientist in the field who taught Jonas Salk the ways of developing a vaccine. Salk first worked on developing a vaccine for influenza, but in 1948, when the polio epidemic hit the US, he began his work in developing a vaccine for polio.
In the 1940s, as polio cases continued to increase, some scientists still disagreed on how it spread. In one extreme example of desperation, according to the National Archives, in 1946, the city of San Antonio, Texas, used DDT, a dangerous insect pesticide that is extremely harmful to humans, in an attempt to kill any virus pathogens in the city and prevent further outbreaks.
With war-discovered DDT and special sprayers, sections of the city are literally fogged with the insecticide in the fight to stop the spread of polio.
Every inch of the city was sprayed with DDT in a misguided effort to kill insects they believed carried the disease. In 1948, Jonas Salk led one of the initiatives of polio vaccine development that was sponsored by the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis, as specified by the NCBI. Salk's project initially aimed to identify the various strains of the poliovirus that were making its way across the nation. Over time, the project expanded to discovering a vaccine against polio. For the next 7 years, Jonas Salk and his team attempted to develop a vaccine for polio. In previous years, several attempts had been made, however all were unsuccessful and in some cases created more polio variants. Jonas Salk bore a sense of responsibility for the polio vaccine as its creator, and chose himself and his family to be the first human test subjects to ensure its safety.
It was clear that these studies had to be expanded into a much larger group of children. That was when my father chose to inject his family.
By 1954, clinical trials on 1.3 million American school children began for Salk's polio vaccine. Initial testing of Salk's vaccine in 1954 showed 80 to 90% prevention, receiving widespread praise from the public. The vaccine's successful announcement occurred on April 12, 1955. Strongly believing that ensuring public health was a moral commitment, Salk actively advocated for it to be mandatory in the US to get a polio vaccination. The turning point of Salk's work came in the mid-1950s when it became evident that due to the growing success of the mass vaccination campaign, cases were beginning to rapidly decline. A horrific disease with a history of devastation spanning millennia finally was showing signs of coming under human control. Salk had no personal interest in profiting from the vaccine, and when asked about patent ownership, he answered,
"There is no patent. This is... Could you patent the sun?"
In the short term, with the widespread adoption of the polio vaccine in the US, there was a remarkable decline in the number of polio cases, with over a 50% reduction each year. The heightened demand for the vaccine became evident, as within just a month, a staggering 5 million children got vaccinated. There were, however, several documented incidents of pushback against the vaccine. In one well-known case, according to the NCBI, a pharmaceutical company called Cutter Laboratories did not properly inactivate the virus during its manufacturing process, subsequently paralyzing 200 children and killing 10. This caused immediate panic about getting the polio vaccine in areas where the Cutter vaccine was distributed. Another anti-polio vaccine proponent was Duane Miller, a rich businessman from Florida who believed that polio was caused by sugar and soft drinks. He spent thousands of dollars targeting vaccine clinics with propaganda promoting his pseudoscience in attempts to dissuade parents from vaccinating their children, as stated by Nick Kepler for Slate magazine. Yet, the evidence proved the Salk vaccine to be successful, and according to the CDC, by 1962 there were fewer than 1,000 cases. By 1959, the vaccine had reached approximately 90 countries worldwide. In 1979, polio was fully eradicated in the US, making the US the first country to achieve full eradication. The global implementation of the polio vaccine has been instrumental in eradicating the disease on a worldwide scale and serves as a testament to the turning point in vaccine development.
In the long term, the polio vaccine's success not only represented a groundbreaking achievement in Western medicine, but also increased confidence in the effectiveness and reliability of vaccinations among the public. The vaccine was freely distributed across the nation, and almost every single individual got the vaccine. Today, America is fully eradicated from the disease, and many other countries are too. The polio vaccine laid the foundation for modern vaccine development. Salk's method of developing vaccines has been integrated into many current vaccines, even being used in the development of the influenza vaccine. Jonas Salk's commitment to public health extended beyond vaccines to a much broader scope.
The substance of his legacy includes this expanded view of how we can best get along together as people in a social fabric.
In 1963, he founded the Jonas Salk Institute for Biological Studies, which is still in operation today, researching immunobiology, cancer, aging, and more.
In 1948, tens of thousands of people, especially children, were infected with and suffered the deadly symptoms of polio, such as paralysis. At the time, there was no known cure for polio. Many people, including Jonas Salk, were working to develop a vaccine. Jonas Salk approached his research from a different angle. Historically, vaccines used live virus pathogens. Salk used inactivated virus particles to create a vaccine for polio. This became a pivotal breakthrough in virology, as his method continued to be implemented into many vaccines. And on April 12, 1955, 7 years after the project was founded, the success of Salk's vaccine was announced. He was declared a national hero. Salk was honored with numerous awards, even being awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian award by President Jimmy Carter, as mentioned by the American Presidency Project.
The success of the polio vaccine marked a revolutionary breakthrough in Western medicine, but also boosted public confidence in vaccines. Polio has been fully eradicated in the US, and Pakistan and Afghanistan have the only recorded cases of polio in the world. This was thanks to the implementation of a vaccine campaign built on public trust. Today, despite the availability of effective vaccines, a large number of individuals are against getting vaccinated. We should remember and honor Salk's legacy and dedication to humanity. It is only through the collective efforts of the global community that we can ensure widespread immunization and ultimately safeguard public health against infectious diseases.